You cannot heal anyone if you're not addressing their environment.
You're listening to Good Faith Weekly. I'm Mitch Randall.
And I'm Missy Randall.
We're here each week exploring the intersection of faith and culture
We find people who stand up, speak out, and step forward.
for inclusion, freedom, and justice for all.
It's time for Good Faith Weekly.
Brought to you by Good Faith Media. Welcome to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, Missy and I are going to catch up, and I've got some great news to share with you about my beloved Red Sox. And then later on the pod, Missy and I sat down with Reverend Autumn Wiggins-Merrill and her husband, Jordan C. Merrill, who are the co-founders of Faith and Recovery Network. We're going to talk about mental health. It's a great episode, so stay tuned. Hello there, Missy.
Hey, how are you?
I am great.
Wow. Wow. A revival broke out.
I am so excited. Now, for those of you who have listened to this podcast for quite some time, you may remember that yours truly is a Boston Red Sox fan.
Just a little bit.
Missy, the summer did not get started out right.
Well, I was just going to say this podcast recording didn't get started on time because of your devotion to the Boston Red Sox.
15 in a row, baby. They have won 15 games in a row, just set a club record for amount of wins. It is an incredible streak. I'm so
I
excited.
don't want to burst your bubble, but I'll be a little bit prophetic here and say from the time of this recording to the time that the episode drops, you've just jinxed them.
Oh, yeah, I'm quite certain that they're going to lose a game.
And it's all going to be on you.
But, I mean, they've gone from the cellar. I mean, they were at the bottom of the cellar. They were below the cellar to actually being in the hunt for a wild card spot in the playoffs. I could not have believed that even 1 month ago. I am so excited.
So welcome, listeners, to our podcast about faith and culture.
Hey, baseball's culture.
Okay.
And for some, like me, it was
It's
one time a religion.
All right, I'll give you that.
Moving on, how are you?
Do you ever have moments where the universe just decides to teach you a little object lesson that you really didn't want?
All the time.
I know. And before I tell this story, let me give a quick caveat to those of you who really want me to use the language of the Holy Spirit teaching me a lesson. I have grown increasingly uncomfortable with that language, in part because I feel like that plays into what we were taught growing up is not to trust your own intuition, but to trust what somebody else or an outside entity, such as the Holy Spirit or a pastor, was telling you was right and wrong. And this led us to do or not do and not report a lot of things that were actually wrong because we didn't trust ourselves. This is a conversation for another day.
Yep.
But for the purposes of this conversation, I just want to say the universe has taught me a little object lesson.
So you're going to take spiritual transference and you're going to put it on a shelf for a second.
Yes.
Okay.
But I will add that what's making me mad about this is that the voice in which I'm hearing the universe speak to me is the preacher behind the pulpit at a Southern Baptist church in 1982.
All right.
That's what's making me mad because I can't.
All right, Missy, come on forward.
That's right. The voice in my head is still that. You guys, deprogramming, it's a process. I'm in it. But anyways, so just hear me out because my father would love me telling this story. Here we go.
Okay. Can't wait.
So earlier this week, you and I took a trek down to my father's house.
We did.
Kind of as a belated birthday, visit to take him to dinner. And then the agreement was we were going to stay around the next day and just do a bunch of projects he needed done around the house. Yep. If some of our listeners may remember that back in December, he had an accident, broke his neck in 3 places. He's good now, but it's been a long 6 months of recovery, surgery, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, we've had to do a lot around his house to make things easier for him as his mobility has been a little bit impacted. So we had some projects to do. We've been promising.
Went down there with a list.
That's right. For example, one of those things was we put his washer and dryer up on pedestals.
We did that.
Hey, I assembled the pedestals. You were nowhere to be found.
Okay, you did.
I emptied the laundry room. You were nowhere to be found. So, yes.
And you guided them into places. I lifted them up onto the pedestal.
That was no joke. That was difficult work. I'm a little bit sore. I don't know about you. Anyways, as we were doing these projects, we also put down some rugs he'd gotten and hung some pictures and did stuff. So in that, I kind of got, motivated and just started doing some clean out and reorganization and, putting things in proper bins. And, and you can imagine someone who's of a different age than me might have, a toolbox that's just a cardboard box instead of, a proper, like, organized,
Yep.
situation.
Different generation.
Right. So as I'm organizing and just having so much fun getting things put back in place really nice and neat, and he is, as anyone who has had a parent can imagine, is getting frustrated with me because now he's not going to be able to, quote, find anything.
Right.
And also convincing him, like, we don't need this anymore. Throw it away. Right? Or also maybe sneaking a few things into the trash when he wasn't looking.
Right.
Nobody tell him.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun and funny. And I kept saying, this is very much a do as I say and not as I do thing, because we all have the junk drawers. We all have those closets that need organizing and whatnot. So at the end of it, I took some pictures to send to my sister of, all the work that we had done. And I was looking at them and I was like, gosh, that looks so good. I thought, why is it so much easier to do these things in somebody else's space? Like, I remember going to friends' houses, when they were going through something. Say, for example, one of my friends was losing a parent. And so another group of friends and we went over and cleaned their entire house because she'd been at the hospital for so long and had little kids. And it was we talked about it afterwards. Like, that was so much fun. We really enjoyed doing it. And it wasn't hard at all.
Yeah.
Why is it so much easier to do that for other people than to do that in your own life? And here's where my object lesson came in and I got real annoyed.
Okay, I can't wait.
Why is it so much easier to assess the mess in somebody else's life than it is to assess and deal with our own?
Oh, well, I think that's pretty easy. I mean, that's lesson 101 in pastoral ministry.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is.
But it just...
Take care of everybody else and ignore your own.
Yeah, but like and so that translated to, why is it so much easier to have opinions about and to judge somebody else for their life choices and consequences than it is to turn that on yourself and to think, I have this mess that needs to be dealt with, but I don't even know how to look at it and process it in order to start dealing with it.
Yeah, I've got news for you. That's what we do for a living.
Okay. I need you to unpack that a little bit.
Well, we look at everybody else's and complain about everybody else's stuff and comment and have opinions about it.
Oh, okay. So that's the reflection and resources
That's exactly right.
that we provide at Good Faith Media. Okay, let us tell you what everybody else is doing.
Exactly.
We're going to comment on it.
That's exactly what we do.
Wow, you guys, you can donate at goodfaithmedia.org if you would like to support this mission.
You're the only one that reveals all of our stuff that's going on in life.
That's true. Wow, you just made another connection for me. That's really funny. We literally make a living off of this.
We do.
Okay, so
but I don't know why it is so easy to have opinions on everybody else's stuff and organize everybody else's stuff, but can't.
Again, not a spiritual or mental, but from a physical standpoint, we've got an area of our house that is completely disorganized. It needs to be dealt with so bad. And I just can't even look at it. I cannot look at it. It just gets overwhelming to me. I get paralysis by analysis and can't move forward.
Yeah.
But then I just think, even, within our life, our relationships, our mental, state, it's the same thing. We just get stuck and can't deal with it.
A lot of our problem, I think, is, like, we go down to your dad's and we had a mission. We had a goal. We knew as soon as we were going to get there, this is what we were going to do. This is what we wanted to have achieved by the time we left, and we did. And so that was the purpose of, not only to see him and spend some time with him, but, obviously to take care of those tasks. When we get back home, it's the last thing you want to do. You want to relax.
Right.
You want to just
there are
veg
shows
out.
to binge.
Absolutely. And what we've learned over 30 something years of doing this thing called marriage, it's going to be there tomorrow.
Fortunately or unfortunately,
Exactly.
it or he or she will be there tomorrow.
That's
I
right.
guess.
Yeah, we can deal with it tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So shifting focus, kind of sort of related, I guess, to this week's guest.
Yes, so we sat down with two incredible people, Reverend Autumn Wiggins-Merrill and her husband, Jordan Merrill, who are the co-founders of the Faith and Recovery Network.
So I have two comments to
Mhm.
make before we go to the interview, one personal and one about Autumn and Jordan. I'll start with my comment about Autumn and Jordan since you just brought them up. Folks, I just want to say the work that they are doing is incredible.
Yeah.
It is difficult. It is heavy lifting. It is overwhelming. All of those things. They are doing it with two babies at
Yes.
home.
Yeah.
And I say that because we had to record the interview in the evening, after babies had gone
After bedtime.
after bedtime. And as luck would have it, as karma, as the universe does, of course, this was the one night the babies weren't going to sleep easier. And so just say that to say there are people out there who are juggling so much and doing so much work, and it makes me feel really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it unfolded right before our eyes. And we heard and learned about two incredible people who, like you said, doing remarkable work, but they're also juggling their family life. And we saw it play out during the interview. And it was like, wow. I mean, I had admiration for them, but now it's just too, even
It was
elevated.
incredible to be able to walk away from the camera for a minute, deal with kiddos and come back and not miss a beat
Right,
and
right.
talk about their mission was it was something to be seen. I wish that could be viewed by our
Yeah.
entire audience because it just makes the work that they're doing that is really difficult
Mhm.
all that much more awe-inspiring. So they are working in a space to help bridge the gap between mental health and churches.
Yep.
And they'll tell you more about their mission and how that exactly plays out. But it got me to thinking about the church and mental health. And I know
Mhm.
this has been a big discussion for a while about how the church responds, how the church communicates, how the church accepts or doesn't accept
Mhm.
issues of mental health. And it brought me just back to a kind of a core memory or core memories of mine and growing up. Again, this kind of relates back to what I talked about in the beginning, that no surprise to anybody who knows me at all, I suffer from anxiety,
Mhm.
like sometimes debilitating anxiety. And this was such a recipe for disaster in growing up in the church,
Mhm.
in the church context that I did, because so much of what was taught was a lot of kind of fear-based,
They spiritualized it.
spiritualized it, hellfire and damnation. And if you didn't want all these bad things to happen, you had to do XYZ and make sure that I just think of how that impacted me growing up and how that left me completely paralyzed from being able to do certain things or achieve certain things that I would have maybe otherwise been able to do.
Right.
And I just thought about, you know what? I don't even know that I knew the word anxiety until maybe adulthood. I knew anxious,
Hmm.
but I was just always told I was a worrier.
Ah, yeah.
And I know you've talked about being a worrier too
Right.
as a
Yeah,
child.
that was the verbiage that
Yeah,
you used
you
back
were
then.
just a worrier and you just needed to quit worrying because if you prayed about it, you could get peace, or if you were worrying too much, that meant you weren't trusting enough
Mhm.
in God.
Yeah.
And again, related to what I said earlier, this is so detrimental to us in terms of teaching us not to rely on ourselves, but that we are relying on this external force. And if we're not doing it good enough, then we're the problem, which only is cyclical in your mental state.
Right.
And so I don't know, I just kind of have been marinating on that since talking to them and really thinking about how the church has dealt with and has addressed or not addressed mental health.
Right. When we talk about mental health, obviously there are two spheres of mental health. There's the social side of it, and then the physiology side of it. And both of those, growing up, especially in the church, were spiritualized. And basically, there was this stigma put on any type of mental health care
Mhm.
that one would receive. Like you said, all you need to do is to use a phrase from another issue that we talk about, pray it away, kind of a
Mhm.
deal. And Marcus Borg often talked about demythologizing the biblical text.
Mhm.
I think we also have to demythologize faith in general,
Right.
because there were these mythologies out there that were created to say you should just be able to have more faith and all of these things would go away. It was worry, or you were a nervous person.
Mhm.
Be careful. I can remember, talks about relatives, be careful of their nerves and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But there was no really focus in on any of their physiology or any of the social circumstances that surrounded them. To me, not dealing with mental health and only dealing with it from a spiritual standpoint is theological malpractice. And here's my example. Because I contend and argue, and I think it's fact, is that mental health is something that affects us physically. We now know
Right.
that. Now, if Missy, you were to break your arm, do you think your preacher would say, "Hey, all you need to do to fix that arm is to pray"?
Right. Speaking of broken arm, would you like to hear another little funny
Oh,
story?
please do.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to take a side road again.
Okay.
So I have a funny story about my mom,
Mhm.
related to a broken arm. When she was a child, she climbed up to the top of a very tall slide. You know, back in the day when they had those slides that were metal and way too tall for
Right,
children to
right.
safely climb on. Anyway, she fell off and broke her arm. And I think she knew it, but she was afraid to tell anybody because all she knew about broken arms, when horses break their legs,
Oh, no.
they get shot.
Oh, no, Susan.
So she
Oh,
went,
no.
yes, she went days without telling anybody
Oh.
that she had broken her
Oh, my
arm until her
gosh.
mom finally realized anytime it was touched, she would scream
Scream.
and took her to the
Oh,
doctor.
bless her heart.
Anyways, so in addition to the church not helping you, sometimes it's societal, sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's misunderstanding, all those
Yeah.
things.
No, that's a great story. I appreciate you sharing it. But yeah, I mean, to me, going back to what I was saying is that, we wouldn't do that in any other physical ailment that we had. We would go see a doctor, we would get medical care. And I think the same can be said about our mental health.
Mhm.
We need professional help. And sometimes that is seeing a therapist, which we recommend to everyone.
Mhm.
And then also there are times where you may need to see a psychiatrist and you may need medication to deal with some kind of mental health issue that you're dealing with. And so yeah, I mean, I think that is something that the church has failed in the past, and we're getting better because of people like Autumn and Jordan.
I do want to say, even as it looks like we're just saying the church has always done it wrong, and in some ways that may be true, but some of that is just we didn't have the language, we didn't have the expertise, we didn't have the knowledge.
Right.
And so I do leave room for that because, like I said, I didn't have the language as a child to understand what anxiety was and how that was impacting me, or even how to verbalize it.
Yeah.
And so the old adage, when you know better, you do better.
Right.
And I think we're making strides in that area for
I agree.
sure. And I think this is, like you said, this is why the work that Autumn and Jordan are doing is so important, because they're helping the church understand and helping the church in tangible ways
Mhm.
get people the assistance and the help and the treatment that they need, instead of trying to say, we're the church, we can fix it all, we'll pray for you and whatever. It's like, okay, we are here for you, and these are the ways in which we're going to help you access the resources that you need.
Absolutely. So Missy and I will be right back with Autumn and Jordan to talk about the Faith and Recovery Network.
I'm Cliff Vaughn, Senior Media Producer at Good Faith Media, where we've produced well over a dozen podcasts. 2 of them are long-form narrative podcasts, deep dives on people and places that have shaped lives of faith. One is Brother Molly, which chronicles the life and work of theologian Molly T. Marshall. The other is A Second Language, about how a church in Little Rock, Arkansas has tried to live out its mission amid a changing culture. Producing these stories altered my perspective. I hope listening to them might do the same for you. Learn more at goodfaithmedia.org.
Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, we've got 2 very special guests with us, the Reverend Autumn Wiggins-Merrill and her husband, Jordan C. Merrill. Both of them co-founded Faith and Recovery Network. Jordan, Autumn, welcome to Good Faith Weekly.
Thanks for having us on.
Yes, absolutely.
So Autumn and Jordan, as Mitch said, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited about our conversation. The work that you guys are doing is so incredibly vital. But before we get into the Faith Recovery Network and the work that you do, I want to kind of back up, because everybody's got a backstory, and let you two start off by telling us what kind of brought you to this work.
Jordan and I are both from Camden, New Jersey, which we were born and raised. We currently are in Richmond, Virginia. But growing up in Camden, New Jersey, which for a large part of our childhood was the #1 most dangerous city in America, ridden with extreme poverty. And where we see high poverty, we often see high crime, as well as some addiction recovery things going on, and mental health. And back in the mid to late 90s, we were not in this era of concern for mental health and
Mhm.
the push for that. And so lots of criminalization of people who have and suffer from mental health disorders, and particularly Black and Brown individuals, especially because we're from a predominantly Black community. So my father was also one of those individuals who was an addict for a good portion of my childhood. And so we just grew up around it a lot. And even though we didn't come to know each other until adulthood, which is really interesting because it's a very small city, um, but my passion for it kind of grew from. It's very interesting. My passion for addiction recovery support and mental health support actually grew out of embarrassment that I had for my dad and individuals who struggled in a lack of understanding
Mhm.
and knowledge. I just thought that people were just making bad choices. And the DARE campaign failed them
Yeah.
Right.
where it didn't where it didn't fail me. And as I got older and my understanding of compassion and my reprogramming of faith as I went into ministry and things like that, my heart for vulnerable individuals changed.
Mhm.
And so that, along with marrying Jordan, who helped me with my theology around individuals who were challenging, kind of sparked, which I didn't know would be faith recovery now,
Right.
but
Mhm.
it sparked an interest for me back then. So.
Yeah. Sure.
So it sounds like you guys have a little bit of a similar dynamic to the one we do, kind of growing up together sort of in that faith arena and evolving and
Mhm.
learning from one another. I love that. So Jordan, how about you? Tell us how you came to this work.
Yeah, in some ways it kind of overlaps. Just to provide some context, Camden does play a big part in
Mhm.
my story also. If you don't know, Camden is just outside of Philadelphia,
Yeah.
right across the Ben Franklin Bridge. It's a
Mhm.
city, it's only about 9 square miles, but I remember growing up, on average, we had 125 open air drug markets in the
Oh my
city.
gosh.
Wow.
We had the highest murder rate in the country. Our two major high schools were always 1 and 2 at the bottom of New Jersey's rankings. 1 out of 4 men in Camden will go to jail uh, once in their life. Since then, it turns out that the city found out that if you actually invest and bring resources to the city, you can see change. So thankfully, Camden is on the up and up. That's a different story when I was growing up.
Sure.
My father was a pastor,
Mm.
as was his father,
Mhm.
and my father's very much a street pastor. Uh, A big part of his ministry was with drug dealers, prostitutes, uh, people struggling with addiction and whatnot. So, he's my one of my heroes. So I, saw a lot of how he dealt with those people and the contrast to the way some of his colleagues saw and helped those tried to help those same people. There was just a gap in between the two, but he always kind of taught me to kind of leave grace and kind of always say like what would Christ do
Sure.
in these situations. So that really helped develop my theology, um, because to me, it made it a lot more real when you're actually in the streets,
Mhm.
as opposed to just being on a pulpit.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's that, and then as I grew up, I got involved in social work, and I just noticed a trend of I primarily work with children right now, and I just noticed a trend of high rates of drug addiction in children.
Mm.
And so between that, just trying to figure out, well, how can I address the addictions and do it in a way that still allows me to walk out my faith? That's when Faith and Recovery Network came up,
Mhm.
it
Sure.
was just seemed like the perfect blend of the two for us.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, I love the mission of Faith and Recovery Network. I mean, you guys are bridging the gap between faith based or community organizations and the mental health and addiction recovery sectors. So tell our audience, Autumn, how do you do that in tangible ways? Because, I mean, this is really important because there is a gap between the two, but you are bridging that gap in very tangible ways. So talk to us a little bit about that, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have three areas in which we are able to we've identified ways where we can support both communities, both sectors, both the faith sector as well as marginalized individuals who are in active addiction or recovery, or struggling with mental health, or are being treated for their mental health. The first thing that we do is we come in and we do workshops. This workshop is just a very clinically based, evidence based workshop developed by our team of social work, therapists, clergy, and nursing staff to kind of help people outside of that space, pastors, congregations, or nonprofit organizations that do direct services to these individuals, right?
Mhm.
Food pantries and things like that. So we come in, we provide workshops for them, training workshops on what is addiction recovery, what am I seeing, what is mental health, what is this big thing,
Right.
and then we break it, drill down to now that you know what it is, this is your role. How can I support? What role do I play? Because oftentimes, I'm a pastor myself. If it wasn't for this work, I wouldn't understand how to support or navigate. And what we know is that because people don't feel like they know what to do, they end up just not doing anything.
Mhm.
So we'll give them a book bag for, with supplies, and we'll feed them in our soups kitchens, but we really won't connect because we don't know what we're seeing, and we're afraid, and stigma has said that these individuals are dangerous, or they're going to steal, they're going to do all of these things. And so we come and we do that workshop. The other thing we do is we offer coaching with our team,
Mhm.
um, for the pastor who is like, hey, I'm seeing this in my congregation, or a member came and disclosed this to me. I really don't know what to say. So our addiction specialists provide some coaching on how to navigate those conversations. And then the last thing we do is we develop what's called our SAFE plan. And our SAFE plan is community resources for addiction recovery treatment and mental health. So we actually vet organizations locally that would be good fits for these pastors to be able to refer their individuals. And they're vetted by us. We literally go to the place. We
Right.
do tours. We sit down with the parishioners. We sit down with the clinicians and have a conversation about what they're doing. Not all treatment centers are doing the right things. That's just the truth. And so we need to have eyes on the ground and make sure that we're able to ask the right questions, to make sure that if a pastor is trusting or guiding their individual who needs help to support, that it is a legitimate avenue for support.
And Autumn, you mentioned the word SAFE or the SAFE program there.
Mhm.
Jordan, I know that is an acronym. So tell us about the acronym and what it stands for and how that plays out in this ministry.
Yep. Support, access, facilitate, empower.
Yeah.
So we provide the support. We explain to them what access to care looks like. We facilitate their learning, and then we empower them to support others.
Love it.
And when we kind of talk about empowering and support others, to me, that's my favorite part of what we do.
Hmm.
'Cause advocacy is such a big part of that, and it's so important for faith leaders.
Mm.
And I also think that as the church is kind of in this weird space where I think a lot of people are forcing it to uh, prove its relevancy,
Hmm.
how it should exist in their lives today. And in doing that, when we kind of tell pastors just what a key position that they have in bridging the gap between those dealing with substance abuse and mental health. Because regardless of how people may say they feel about the church, the facts are that almost half of people who are dealing with a severe mental episode or uh, a substance episode uh, turn to a faith leader first.
Yeah.
Mhm.
67%.
They don't call hotlines. They don't go to doctors. They go to faith leaders first, and we think that's because primarily that faith leaders hold a certain level of trust in the community
Mhm.
that the hospital doesn't have. On the flip side of that, only about I think 10% of seminaries in America require its students to
Right.
take a mental health course.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
You know,
So, Jordan, I want to kind of go back to what you told me about your upbringing and how your father was a pastor, like you said, in the streets, and how that wasn't looked upon the same way from his colleagues. So, with that, the stigma sort of that exists in faith communities about mental health care and about substance abuse, I wondered, again, given your professional experience now and your experience growing up with, your father setting his example, talk to us a little bit about the stigmas that surround that, especially in the faith communities and what can be done.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it plays out in two major ways. I think the first way is that too often in our churches, when we see those who are dealing with addiction and mental health issues, it's sort of looked at, we position them as an other
Hmm.
to
Mhm.
our good faith.
Mhm.
So where it's like, we are in the right because if you're not, you'll be like them.
Mhm.
Where a lot of times I hear pastors say, thank God that he woke me up and clothed me in my right mind, as to say those who are dealing with mental
Mm,
issues aren't,
Mhm.
you know. And it was always, you have to stay in the church, you have to stay in the word, you have to pray, or you will be like them.
Mhm.
right.
Absolutely. And it sort of kind of leads to a sort of dehumanization process where we see these people who are dealing with those things are sort of given this fiendish character who is some sort of adversary of Christ type archetype that we must strive not to be like, and we would do that through our faith. So
Yeah.
that's why we have to stay diligent, so we're not like them.
Mhm.
And then the other one was just sort of like, um, these are people who have fallen from the faith, and for them to get back in to God's good graces and to be healed has to be through the faith.
Mhm.
So, in other words, a lot of pastors would not recommend therapy,
Mhm.
would not recommend rehab.
Hmm.
You would have to pray away those things,
Yeah.
have to deepen your faith.
Mhm.
And so, part of what we do is try to, at Faith Recovery Network, is sort of say, like, listen, addiction is not a moral failing.
Mhm. It's a
Someone who's
medical
dealing with mental
diagnosis.
health issues,
Right.
it's not due to a lack of faith that you have depression or anxiety.
Mhm.
Mhm.
There are systematic uh, forces at work here that make those issues more prevalent in certain communities.
Hmm.
Because I really do believe that as a faith leader, you cannot heal anyone if you're not addressing their environment.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's sort of like the advocacy work that we deal with, to kind of let people know, like, this is bigger than just a faith issue. This is a societal issue that is being that can be changed
Mhm.
through material means and not necessarily through some sort of divine intervention.
Not solely through divine
Right.
intervention.
Right.
Sometimes the divine intervention is God calling the therapist
Mhm.
to this work, that calling the addiction specialist to the work. That is the divine intervention. It's not like a random miracle
Hmm.
Right.
that happens. Yeah.
So, I was a pastor for over 2 decades, and I can remember, like you said, a lot of times pastors feel like clergy feel like they are on the front lines, and a lot of times people walk through our door, there we immediately recognize that they're needing counseling.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
always my philosophy as a clergy and as a pastor, I could provide them pastoral counseling, spiritual, guidance,
Mhm.
but they needed more than I was trained to give. And
Mhm.
so, I would often refer them to professional counselors, licensed counselors that could do the work that they needed to do. What do
Mhm.
you advise clergy to do when they realize that, hey, this is out of my league, even though you got two
Mhm.
parishioners there who really want to talk to you because they trust you, as you said. But, they the reality is they need more help than a lot of clergy can provide.
I would say we advise them to do exactly what you did. Refer them to support. Walk them to it though, right? They trust
Mm,
you. So walk them through that process. Now, when they have to be responsible for their own recovery, they have to be responsible for their own mental health, but you can be their guide to make sure that they feel safe enough and encouraged enough to be able to take that step forward and to make sure you have resources. That's why we have the Safe Plan, because you were a pastor for multiple decades, right? You recognize
Yeah.
that resources are not always there.
Right.
And then you don't have the training to be able to know, whether this person has Medicaid and how to get them the care they need, or how do they get access if they don't have insurance, and if they need psychiatric help versus therapy, whether they need meds, whether that's
Sure.
that's not something that you may be comfortable with exploring, but making sure that you have the resources to be able to say, you know what, I can't do this. And the honesty, being honest and saying, I want to help. And this is the best way that I know how to help, is to get you to these resources. And leading with that. And also, again, something that we stress is they have to be responsible for their own recovery process. And the reason why we do that is not because it's harsh. So I work in addiction recovery. I've graduated over 500 clients through treatment programs. A lot of them are doing very well, sustaining their sobriety over the past 5 years. But it's because they are doing it. We can guide them and we can hold their hands. And when they need us, we can, like Jordan likes to say, keep the light on. But we have to encourage them to take those steps themselves.
Yeah.
And let me just add, part of our workshops that, when we do these trainings, is that we make it very clear that we aren't trying to make faith leaders into clinicians.
Mhm.
Hmm.
That's not our
Right.
job. If
Right.
anything, we're trying to make them into sort of like triage officers,
I like that.
to kind of
Yeah.
like see some of the signs and, maybe kind of direct people to, the right place where they need to go in order to receive help. Interestingly enough, during our first workshop that we ever did, this was sort of our,
Oh,
our our confirmation moment. So during our first workshop, we at a local church down here in Richmond, Virginia, we were setting up tables and getting our little booth together and whatnot.
Mhm.
And while we were doing that, this gentleman walks out of the woods
yep.
into the church,
Mhm.
and he's having a episode,
Right.
a mental episode.
Mhm.
And the pastor of the church does what most pastors do. You sit them down in the annex,
Hmm.
you get on the phone, you call sister so and so who may know somebody and
Yeah.
hope that they're home to answer the phone. You call Mr. So and so and not.
Mhm.
And so he kind of hung around and got stuck. And they didn't really have, uh,
The
the
resources.
resources. They didn't know what to
Right.
do. Um,
Didn't speak English.
and he didn't speak
Oh,
English.
Oh my
wow.
goodness.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Didn't speak English. The pastor is semi bilingual. He knew a little bit, and
Right.
I spoke Spanish too. So we were able to help him.
Mhm.
He sat through the
Sat through
workshop.
the work.
Uh-huh.
Wow. But that's a perfect example of why we
Mhm.
need Faith and Recovery Network.
But thankfully, we were able to help them, develop a
Mhm.
plan. So
Mhm.
now, when if someone else comes out the woods and needs help, they have a protocol that they
Yep.
and an execution plan that they
Mhm.
can use to, really get people into the healing process.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
I
And
think.
we don't just like Google. Like, my favorite part about our safe plan, right? Because people can Google treatment
Oh,
centers
Right,
sure.
for you.
right.
Sure.
They can Google counselors or mental health, but we actually do warm transfers so that the pastor knows, like, no, this is the admissions director. This is exactly who you need to call. They
Mhm.
know who that pastor is, and the situation when they call. So we do warm transfers. That's why it's so important for us to go and get to know the organization, because we don't want to just be like, oh, yeah, this is what they do. Here you go. We
Right.
do the word transfers. We know, we let the pastors and we facilitate that conversation with the admissions person at that organization, at that treatment center, so that the pastor knows, like, the person who the pastor is calling, that intake coordinator, knows that, hey, this is not this is a pastor who does not know all of the things, but he knows that this person needs help, so that they're prepared for that conversation when they ask them, like, oh, is this person on Medicaid, and the pastor's like, oh, I don't know.
Right, right.
So that they're prepared for those calls.
And that is such an important part of this process because, as you mentioned, one of the main reasons that individuals go to a clergy first is because of a high level of trust with them.
Right.
And if we don't do the vetting process, if we just send, parishioners to, like you said, a Googled center that we don't know anything about or don't have a relationship with, that discredits, our ministry, discredits, our reputation with the parishioner. So having that vetting process is so important. Having a relationship with these centers, knowing the individuals in admissions, I mean, that's a game changer. And so
Yep.
that's great advice.
So,
And anytime it changes, if it's something, new hires, things like that, it's our job. We connect with them every quarter, just making sure this is the person still
Right.
here. If they're not, we update it and then we let that church know
Yeah.
this is their new person.
Yeah.
So I feel like another kind of underlying issue with what brings people to the church, not only because that's a place they know in their community or that's a trusted pastor, but sometimes it is um, a financial concern. I don't have, a $30,000 check to go right to the, substance abuse place. So
Mhm.
you guys work with health, or you focus on health equity as well. So I wonder if
Yes.
we can talk a little bit about that because I know, Mitch and I, in preparing today, we were kind of, reliving some experiences that he alluded to a moment ago. But sometimes people would come to him for counseling that he wasn't equipped to give, but they
Yeah.
would just say, no, but I want to talk to you. And sometimes it was because I don't have the money to go to a licensed counselor or to go to an addiction specialist, recovery center. So talk to us a little bit about health equity and what are some things that need to change? What are some things that we can do?
Okay. So first, I love that you brought that up. That's one of the reasons why we keep our workshops free.
Mhm.
Because there is a component where this level of training and access, that small church that is seeing and often serving these individuals do not have the resources to be able to pay for this type of training, and also may not have the support from the congregation to encourage it. So we keep it free. But then when we're developing the plan for them, we make sure that we always have an option as an organization that is vetted, that has pro bono options, that has uh, coaching options. And then we actually have a therapist that works with us. That if she needs to step in to help with coordinating of support, grant, to provide a grant for them to be able to go to services and stuff like that. That's how we help with it. If it is something beyond what, maybe we don't have the grant there, maybe that organization sponsors certain people. We just partnered with an organization, it's Christian based treatment center, that they have 100 clients. They can have 100 clients at a time, and 60% of them do not have insurance. And they just cover it. And that church actually has a collection, as a like a mark. When you're
Mhm.
doing the collection, you can say
Right.
building fund, things like that. It's specifically for their treatment, to cover sponsor individuals who need to come into treatment.
So in you put it in those terms, it feels like mission work to me.
Mhm.
So maybe talk about that. We've long grown up, or I did, at least in my, church communities, where your mission work was, funding the missionaries around the world overseas. Talk
Mhm.
about how this is the mission work that we need in this moment.
I think that when we're talking about making sure that people have the resources that they need, I think that really goes back to our advocacy part.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, we advocate for. I think I say again, it kind of goes back to the societal part, where we kind of say, okay, where are the resources in the city?
Mhm.
As a pastor, what is your influence?
Mhm.
So in order sure that vulnerable communities are receiving those resources, and what can you do with the resources that you have to
Mhm.
ensure the needs. And then also, part of it is the training part is, there's a lot of overlap in between spiritual practices and some of the therapeutic practices too, as far as like prayer and meditation and things like that, that we feel that faith leaders can use to sort of temporarily help people get through certain things, especially from like a faith-based perspective.
Mhm.
Uh, but the reality of the situation is just, if we do the best we can to get resources, but if they're not
Sure.
there, then
Right.
Mhm.
that's just they're not there. So that's really where again, like where we individualize those safe plans, that, for
Right.
certain pastors. So we kind of do a deep dive into their communities to see what
Yeah.
actually is available. Because the truth of the matter is that those resources just aren't widespread available right now.
The wider church community needs to also be aware of this work and that it's important too. And that's what I love
Yeah.
about the example you were just giving about the church, having that fund because
Mhm.
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
understanding that this work is community work and it is vital work.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, and kind of to tack on to what you said about the importance of relationships, when I was pastoring in Fort Worth, Texas, we had a relationship with our local denominational affiliate, and there was a focus on mental health. And so, what the congregations decided to do is to enter a partnership with the local association and some specific counseling centers that had been vetted. And so what we
Mm.
would do, the church would pay for a session, the association would pay for a session, and then the center would write one off. So we at least knew they were getting 3 counseling sessions that would not be out of pocket, and that helped get the ball rolling. So there are creative ways to provide the mental health care that a lot of people have. So you are doing that, and I just really really appreciate that. So a lot of our focus today has been on the church helping their parishioners and their community with mental health needs. So here's
Mhm.
my last question for you two. I'm clergy. There has been a huge emphasis over the last 5 years, especially after the global pandemic, about clergy mental health. Do you all do
Mhm.
anything in that area to help clergy bring down the stigma of mental health and then
Mhm.
also find help themselves? Because clergy are dealing with so much these days.
That's so we're working on that. I actually just did a training a couple of weeks ago, compassion fatigue.
Ah, yeah.
Is and we specifically did it. I just did it for addiction recovery workers. Um, but I think that we need to start offering that to the clergy as well. The people who are in the field who have the passion is there, but it is exhausting. I'm
Mhm.
going to be very transparent and saying
Mhm.
I work with individuals direct with services to people struggling co-occurring mental health and addiction. And while I love the work that I do, they get on my nerves sometimes. Oh my goodness. Sometimes, and even if we recognize relapse as a part of the process, I just wish they stopped doing it sometimes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But there is the heart is still there, and you have to be able to take care of your own mental health and find coping mechanisms for yourself if you're going to encourage others to do so. If you're going to connect them to those resources, especially if you're in the human to human business, and pastors and churches absolutely are in the human to human business. We have to be able to create spaces for them to not just get the training for service, but the training so that they know that their mental health is valued, and it is important just who they are, regardless of who they're serving. So we're working on adding that into our curriculum as well, because right now we just do it for addiction and mental health professionals.
I love that.
And I would say the other thing that we do that I want to make sure that we don't miss, and I think it's important to talk about, is that one of the questions, because we've talked about health equity, but stigma is really, really a big part where
Mhm.
we just want to destigmatize. And so we open up our workshop with a specific question every time. It is when you see someone who's struggling with addiction or having a mental health episode, how does that make you feel? Ask every person in the training that question, because before we get to resources, before we get to anything of the tangible, practical, active things, we have to deal and be honest with how we're feeling about this. I mean, we've got a lot of different answers. We've got people say they were angry, they get embarrassed, they feel helpless. Had someone say that they feel exposed,
Yeah.
right? And if we have to get that out there before we can start the training, we got to be honest about how this makes you feel, because you're not going to be equipped to help anybody if you yourself are wrestling with that stigma. And it's okay. You got to be honest with it, though.
That's so interesting because we often talk about the stigma of seeking mental health care, but actually giving it, there's stigmas associated to that too. There's barriers, and you all deal with that. So,
Okay, so you guys have set up an amazing organization, and I love everything that you've said. How do we get this in every single community out there? Do you guys work specifically, in one state? Are you national? How can people reach out? How can people get on your schedule for this type of training?
Yeah, so the two of us, we do our best,
Right.
and we try to travel as much as we can. Right now, we're mainly focused on the East Coast, but we are working on getting our workshops virtual so that more churches across the country and maybe even international can kind of connect with us and maybe connect with them and help them out that way. Um, but just being honest, it's tough. We got two little ones that are
sure.
crying as we speak right now.
Same.
But yeah,
No, but that's me.
yeah. But yeah, but we're continuing to work and learn, and hopefully we can grow and help other people grow. We have a website that people can reach out to us for, but we really try to get out to people. I mean, we've had workshops everywhere from Richmond, Philadelphia, New Jersey. We have a couple scheduled in various places on the East Coast. So yeah, like I said, you can definitely go to our website, and we would do our best to reach anybody wherever you are. I mean, we really want to. We feel like this work is relevant everywhere, so we try to be as many places that we can.
What is the website?
Yes, so you can actually reach us at frnforall .org, and that is short for Faith and Recovery Network. We used to have faithandrecoverynetwork.com, but that was too long. So we shortened it to frnforall.org. And you can contact either Autumn or myself. Both of our emails are listed on that website. And if anybody has any inquiries or would like to, maybe work with us, I mean, we're always open for anybody. We want to just help everyone.
I love that.
Autumn and Jordan, thank you so much for joining us this week on Good Faith Weekly. It has been a delight visiting with you two and learning more about Faith and Recovery Network. We're so excited to introduce our audience to your remarkable work. And thank you, Jordan, for telling us where they can find out more about Faith and Recovery Network. But before we let you go, we've got one last question that we're going to ask both of you, and Missy has the honor of asking it.
I'm going to slip in one more question, though, about just asking if you provide any services for spouses who work together.
You got a special webinar for that one?
I feel like
Not yet, but we can consider that.
you guys are in that too. So you get what I mean probably right now. All right. So Autumn and Jordan, as you know, our tagline at Good Faith Media is "There's more to tell." So in light of your work and our conversation today, what is your more to tell? Autumn, we'll start with you.
My more to tell is that healing and restoration is in your reach, even if you need someone else to grab it for you.
That.
All right, Jordan, top that.
Set me up, 'cause let's see. One, free Palestine. Two, don't pray away, pray to pay for a therapist.
Oh,
there you go.
that.
I like that a lot. So a lot of wisdom there, you two. Thank you so much again for joining us this week. Again, Autumn and Jordan are the co-founders of Faith and Recovery Network. We really appreciate you being on the show this week.
Appreciate you guys for having us.
Thank you so much.
And to our audience, Missy and I will be back next week. And until then, keep living good faith. You've been listening to Good Faith Weekly, hosted by Mitch and Missy Randall. This weekly podcast from Good Faith Media discusses matters of faith and culture.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us a like and a glowing review. We produce the podcast out of Norman, Oklahoma. Our music comes from Pond 5.
And we're supported by listeners like you. Learn more about us at goodfaithmedia.org.